Make up mine. Fight.
Speed. It's the determinant factor for success in the world of video games. You ever wonder why speedrunning is so popular, or why nobody ever wants to play tanks and hero shooters? It's because speed rules all. Run fast, kill fast, win fast. Also die fast, but that's beside the point. In Team Fortress 2 specifically, speed plays an important role in the game's balance, with its best classes from a competitive standpoint either being just straight up faster than others or extremely mobile through external means. Being a team shooter on the Source engine with a robust movement system, TF2 is a game where speed plays a crucial role in victory. To this end, TF2 features a ton of weapons that modify their respective classes' move speed to help them keep pace with their enemies. In this video, I want to talk about a few of my favorite examples. These are 3 speed boosting weapons in Team Fortress 2. Weapons that poise to turn their classes from snails into sonics. I want to stress that I will not be talking about every single weapon in the game that modifies their respective classes' move speed here. This is because for some of them, I want to save them for more dedicated specialized videos, and for others, it's because I really don't want to get footage with them. Sorry eviction notice, sorry hot hand. I've picked a selection of 3 speed boosting weapons that I particularly enjoy for this video, and if you're interested in hearing me talk about more of them, let me know. Either way, let's get this ball rolling. But before we begin, I'd like to note that this video is brought to you by manco.store. That's right, it worked. Now, I know people can be wary of YouTube sponsors, but I am speaking in earnest sincerity here when I tell you that I have used manco.store a ton. Like, I mean a ton. This is easily my favorite place on the internet to buy Team Fortress 2 items from. They're extremely fast, their support is extremely helpful, their cash out option is robust and allows me to convert my TF2 items into real world money whenever I may need, and their items are available at the lowest prices they are anywhere else online, including Tour of Duty tickets and Manco supply crate keys at the lowest prices they're available at on any marketplace, plus CS2, Rust, and Dota 2 items as well. Plus, unlike the Steam community market, items purchased from manco.store will not be trade locked for a week after you purchase them. So if you're at all interested in getting TF2 items at the cheapest prices available anywhere online, use my affiliate link in the description and pick some stuff up from manco.store. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the video.
I hate when people underestimate my fastness. I'm fast. I'm so fast, you couldn't even comprehend how fast I am.
Spy is in an interesting position for this video, because despite having the same move speed as Medic, tying him as the second fastest class in the game, he's also traditionally seen as the weakest class from most senses. He's a glowing exception to the typical fast equals good archetype in competitive games, and it's partially due to him having to actively endanger himself to fulfill his primary role. Getting a backstab is dangerous, and any weapon that makes doing it just a bit safer and more comfortable is always welcome. And while some players might prefer the health cushioning of the kunai or the instant disguise of the Your Eternal Reward, Spy does have one other on-kill effect type of knife that's also very fun to use and surprisingly effective: the speedy stabber known as the Big Earner. The Big Earner is such a fun TF2 weapon, offering a lineup of positives that are guaranteed to tickle the brain wrinkles of any active, aggressive Spy players, yet with a single negative that requires actively gauging threats and picking your battles carefully. It's kind of like Kunai Light, offering a similar yet at the same time very different type of on-kill bonus, while also making the Spy squishier, but not as squishy as that weapon as a trade-off. But just how does it stand out on its own against its contemporaries? Let's find out. The Big Earner is an unlockable melee weapon for Spy, a large broken switchblade that no longer switches. This weapon's primary positive is that it grants a guaranteed unconditional 3-second speed boost on a successful melee kill. This does not have to be a backstab, as the speed boost is also granted from a butter knife. This weapon additionally restores 30% of the Spy's cloak on melee kill, a stat that also isn't backstab dependent. As a sole negative, this weapon decreases the Spy's base health by 25, putting him at the very important HP threshold of 100, allowing him to be one-shot by many more sources in the game than he usually is. So, random TF2 boomer thing that I never see people talk about, the speed boost on kill stat wasn't added until 2015's gunmetal update. Prior to that, this weapon only granted a 30% cloak on kill while still decreasing your max health, during an extended patch state where the Latrange also granted an equivalent cloak refresh for just landing 2 long-range shots. Basically, the Big Earner really sucked ass for about 4 years. However, once its speed boost was introduced, the Big Earner really came into its own as a weapon and found itself a very comfortable niche within Spy's weapon lineup. And what is that niche? Well, this is the tweaking knife.
Surprise! Button 6, 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 button 6.
What are the odds you don't think I make any money on this video because of this? The Big Earner is a weapon of dizzying highs, terrifying lows, and creamy middles. Its intended niche should be very clear. It enables an aggressive chain stab enabling hit and run spy playstyle, yet at the risk of allowing the player to be one shot by a lot of common sources. Spy is a class who has a lot to gain from an on-kill speed boost. Anything that makes closing the distance on enemies and escaping tricky situations easier is appreciated on a class who typically wants to slink in and out undetected while securing kills. To this end, being granted a speed equivalent to that of a scout for 3 seconds after securing a stab is an extremely layered and useful utility to have that enables a ton of avenues for the player to take in the throes of the average match. Its first and most obvious use case is chain stabbing. If you find yourself in an advantageous position behind a group of enemies, you can basically just act as a wave of death, securing one stab after another and darting from enemy to enemy with a speed and efficiency that they cannot react to. Between your buffed speed and unpredictable movement, human reaction time, and TF2 server jank, it's very easy to secure a large spree of stabs out of a single successful one using the Big Earner. This knife makes closing the distance on enemies for follow-up stabs a breeze, and makes juking around enemies who sussed you out for trick stabs surprisingly easy. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, as the increased movement speed can also significantly throw off your pacing and muscle memory, something that happened to me a lot while recording footage with this weapon, but once you get into the groove, it's an exhilarating spy experience. The other and opposite use case of the speed boost is hit and runs on single targets. You ever want to feel like a stealth game protagonist in TF2, a real Garrett or Ezio or Burger King? Slap on the Big Earner and get stabbing. The speed boost makes escaping after a single important stab extraordinarily breezy, especially with the rejuvenated cloak that you're also granted, making targeted picks and cheesy get-ins and get-outs much safer than they are with the stock knife. I wouldn't say it's as good for this as the kunai, or maybe even the Your Eternal Reward, which in my opinion both have more impactful and interesting on-kill effects, but to the Big Earner's credits, none of its downsides are as strict as those knives, so not nearly as much playstyle adaptation will have to be made. Also, getting the speed boost means that you're able to clear long distances and make jumps that you normally couldn't, opening up a ton of in-the-moment big brain pathing and escapes. It's so exhilarating to get a stab with the Big Earner, spend a fraction of a second gauging your surroundings, and deciding on the fly whether to chase more kills or beat a hasty retreat. For my money, this is the most fun spy knife to use in the moment. Its feedback loop and player satisfaction when securing stabs is much more tangible and immediately recognizable than what's granted with any other knife. The kunai is definitely good, but when we compare big health numbers to whoa, I have a clear choice for which one I enjoy more in the moment. Like I said, this is the tweaking knife. It's like that Semi-Charmed Life song about meth. Using the Big Earner will pick you up until you break. That said, not unlike that song, the enjoyment granted by using the Big Earner is most certainly fleeting and very much only exists in the moment, as I unfortunately find this knife to fall somewhat short of its contemporaries in the grand scheme of things. This is mainly due to opportunity cost and what you're getting for each stab. The kunai and maybe Your Eternal Reward both grant an immediate safety net from follow-up stabs, either through intentional game design or player psychology, whereas you're still very much exposed after a stab with the Big Earner. You're very fast and very hard to pin down, but only for a couple seconds, and you still only have 100 health either way. If you can't get away and secure another stab, you're very vulnerable. Even with your boosted speed, you're still running around on an unbuffed 100 health body. Compare this to the survivability granted by the kunai and the inconspicuousness granted by the YER, and the Big Earner ends up feeling the least impactful in a broad sense to actually secure a stab with. It's flashy, but it's very style over function.
I never thought I'd get this far.
And most importantly, on top of this, that 100 base health value is really rough. 100 is probably the single most important damage threshold in TF2, so resting precisely at this threshold with no way to cushion yourself outside of medic overheal is definitely risky. For reference, having only 100 max HP puts you in one-shot range for a single demo pipe, a close-range soldier rocket, a full-damage scattergun blast, a close-range shotgun meat shot, and many other things. While the base number is higher than the kunai's, a kunai spy who knows what he's doing will likely spend very little time actually at their decreased health value fighting enemies. Again, while the Big Earner is very fun and good, you're much more exposed using it than you are with the kunai, even with its speed boost taken into account. You can run as fast as you want, but that doesn't make bullets hurt any less. Even with that though, the Big Earner is still a very fun, very exhilarating, and extremely flex knife to pull out when the situation calls for it. This is one of the biggest examples of a fun out of 10 weapon in TF2 for me, and a great showcase about about sometimes, a weapon's biggest faults can just wind up being that they're not another weapon. If Spy didn't have at least one other knife that offered an arguably more impactful on-kill effect, the Big Earner would be an easy contender for his best option. It really only falls flat in the regard that you're left more vulnerable using it than with other options. But even with that, it's far from a bad weapon, and I'd say, all things considered, it's still probably better in the moment than the Your Eternal Reward, and definitely the Spycicle. I don't know, I've heard a lot of opinions on that thing. For me though, the Big Earner is a fun tool to bust out when I'm feeling extra frisky as Spy. For when I don't care about surviving, I don't care about the long term, I just want to have fun. It's all about the money after all.
Crack that whip.
Next up is a perennial favorite of pretty much everyone who's ever played TF2. This weapon is interesting to me, as despite its extremely powerful lineup of positives and overall generalist utility, I've never seen anyone propose the idea that it's broken, over-centralizing, or a detriment to either its classes or the game's overall balance. It's banned in 6s, but what isn't really? It's also a weapon that's very easy to make funny sex jokes with, which is the real reason everyone likes it. Let's talk about Soldier's all-time kinky classic, the Disciplinary action. Being totally upfront, this is not only easily the objective best weapon we'll be talking about in this video, but also probably one of the top 5 or 10 best unlockable weapons in the entire game, all classes and item slots considered when all said and done. It's just such a universally useful and extremely splashable option for Soldier that literally any playstyle or loadout save for Trolldier can immediately benefit from. And it's all wrapped up in a design and concept that's just as funny as it is begging to be renamed something foul. But why is all that? Let's find out. The Disciplinary action is an unlockable melee weapon for Soldier. A leather riding crop style whip, this weapon's primary positive is that it grants both the Soldier and a teammate of his choice a brief speed boost when he strikes them with it using a melee attack. The speed boost for teammates is granted for 2 seconds, and the one for the Soldier himself is granted for a slightly longer 3 seconds. The boost amount varies depending on the class, with slower classes generally benefiting more. This boost can be reapplied indefinitely so long as the Soldier keeps whipping his teammate. Additionally, this weapon has a funny hidden stat that grants it a gargantuan 70% longer attack range than stock, the longest melee range in the game in fact, even outreaching Demo Man's swords. This allows the Soldier to attack enemies and boost teammates from tremendous distances, and even allows him to strike players behind him at close enough ranges. As a sole negative, this weapon deals 25% less damage than Soldier's default melee weapon. So it probably doesn't take a doctorate in TF2 brain rot to realize why this thing is so damn good. Its primary positive, the ability to boost teammate speed an indefinite number of times on command, is legitimately preposterous in the right hand, and it being offset by the distinctively generous single downside of a 20% lower damage doesn't do a whole lot to make it less viable. This is the conclusive, definitive, best support melee in TF2. A weapon that helps the Soldier using it and his team in equal measure by granting both a tangible and extremely useful in-the-moment buff. It doesn't matter that it does less damage because it is such a powerful supportive tool. If you have the Disciplinary action equipped, your absolute first instinct should always be to have it drawn and swinging anytime you're leaving spawn with your teammates. Anytime you are not face to face with enemies and walking to the front lines, you should be taking belt to ass and whipping your entire team to the front lines to beat the enemies to the point and catch them off guard. It is unbelievably powerful to be able to speed up your entire team's rollout an unlimited, repeatable number of times, and while you might be thinking that you can only whip one teammate at a time, TF2's unique handling of friendly melee hitbox and the variable boost amounts granted to each class means that it's very easy to spread the love amongst your entire team as they all sprint to the front lines by just holding M1 and wildly looking around. If you are within range of a teammate and not fighting the enemy, you should be whipping. The benefits of this boost to you and your team are obvious and very self-explanatory. Any class in any game state can benefit from more speed, but I want to put extra emphasis on how this also uniquely helps the Soldier using the item. He's obviously the second slowest class in the game without rocket jumps, and if you're using this weapon to boost your team to the front line, you're probably not rocket jumping, so being able to reach the point much faster without eating into your health or ammo reserve is very useful. Additionally, there are some very fun rollouts and bits of movement tech that are only performable with this weapon's speed boost or an equivalent, and while I'm not good enough to demonstrate that myself, I'm sure this footage I've downloaded and credited will speak for itself. Lastly, a quick whip boost into a nearby teammate makes for an exceptionally strong in-the-moment burst movement option for escapes and putting pressure on enemies, as all it takes is one good connected swing swing on a teammate to grant yourself a speed boost equivalent to that of a backstab with the big earner, because Soldier is obviously much harder than Spy and needs the help. Then there's this weapon's boosted melee range, which, gun to my head, I couldn't conclusively tell you whether or not it was intentional. Like, it's been in the game since this weapon was added over 13 years ago and has gone unchanged the whole time, but its sheer volume, on top of the fact that it remains unlisted in this weapon's stats, kind of leads me to believe that it may have not been an entirely conscious decision, and that Valve's too scared to change it because it's been a part of the weapon for so long. But yeah, the funny Soldier Whip actually has the longest melee range out of any melee weapon in TF2, a tremendous 70% boost over stock melee weapons, meaning that its effective range far exceeds the actual in-game model and animation when Soldier swings it. This also affects both teammates and enemies, and causes a very silly interaction where its range is so big that you can hit people you can't even see on top of or behind you if they're at hair sniffing range. Again, not too sure how intentional this stat or its tuning were, but it's really strong, means that you can swing on enemies at least once or twice and they can't hit you in a melee fight, even against demo knights, and is all around very cool. Plus, it means bouncing enemies up with a rocket and then whipping them is a legitimate combo. And while you might think that this weapon's 25% lower damage might be a damning stat for Soldier specifically, a class who needs his melee weapon to officially fight enemies at close range due to rocket self-damage, it's really not that bad. For one, its extended melee range means that you'll always have a leg up in melee fights that your enemy does not have access to before you properly engage. They are fighting on your terms and need to close the distance to damage you. For two, this weapon's base damage is 49, meaning that its hits are stratified in such a way that it only takes one more swing than stock to kill anything but a heavy, which is made much easier by its boosted melee range. And for three, while I know this is purely a placebo and has no actual basis in the game's coding or design, it sure feels like this thing crits a whole lot, like in the Uber Saw or Pan tier. I swear if you swing this thing 10 times, a good 6 or 7 of them will be crits. Even with its 25% lower base damage, the Disciplinary action is designed in such a way where it still remains a legitimately useful and effective melee attacking option if you can capitalize on its unique strengths and time your swings appropriately. All of this combines to make the Disciplinary action easily one of Soldier's very best melee weapons, and the only reason it's not a mandatory must-equip is because between the Escape Plan and the Market Gardener, Soldier has a very competitive melee slot. In a vacuum, though, this is an incredibly front-loaded and very, very powerful weapon, and if this exact lineup of stats existed on, say, a Pyro or Sniper weapon, it'd easily dominate their melee slot. It's an item that allows Soldier to support his team in the most tough-love way imaginable, while also helping himself and not compromising his own capability to do so. This is one of the very best, most well-designed, and easily splashable weapons in all of TF2, and it's very funny to me that it all comes in a tool you can buy at stores, which a good percentage of my audience legally aren't allowed into. Also, Poison is the hottest Street Fighter girl, don't at me. The Babyface's Blaster is a weapon I have not discussed in detail on this channel in a very, very long time. Back in 2023, I initially framed it as a weapon Valve actively hates, a severely overbalanced and conceptually flawed item that's designed in such a way that makes it so it'll always either be very bad or very broken with no middle ground. A damned if you do, damned if you don't type of design that satisfies no one. However, since first talking about this weapon nearly 2 years ago, I've gotta admit, I've used it quite a lot. Despite being very down on the Babyface's Blaster in the past, I have to admit there's some sort of morbid appeal to using this thing. And now that I have a bit more of a nuanced perspective on it, I do want to discuss why. Is it a fun out of 10 fringe weapon for Scout, or a miserable gimmick that fails to live up to its contemporaries? And most importantly, does Valve actively hate this weapon? Let's find out. The Babyface's Blaster is an unlockable primary weapon for Scout, a lever-action shotgun with a drum barrel. This weapon's primary use case is that upon dealing damage, it'll steadily fill a unique boost meter that increases the Scout's movement speed as it builds. It takes exactly 100 damage to reach maximum boost, at which point the Scout will reach the literal player speed cap of the game. As a few trade-offs, this weapon lowers Scout's base movement speed by 10% at minimum boost, only loads 4 shots as opposed to the Scattergun 6, and loses its boost on either a double jump or taking damage, with 75% boost being lost on a double jump and 4% being lost for each point of damage. This means that it only takes 25 incoming damage to completely drain a full boost. I think it should be very obvious why this weapon has such a difficult uphill battle to be balanced in a healthy way. Taking the game's dedicated fast mobile hit-and-run duelist and making him the literal fastest controlled player entity possible in the game's engine is definitely a choice. And back over a decade ago, this was on full display, as the Babyface's Blaster Blaster's old 2013 design, where it didn't lose jump on taking damage and only decreased your boost by 25% on double jump, was one of the most overtuned weapons in TF2's history. It was astronomically powerful and difficult to contend with in the hands of a resourceful scout who knew how to manage their boost. This led to its eventual 2015 nerf, and this is where it currently stands. Let's talk about it. Right out of the gate, the Babyface's Blaster is the ultimate tweaking weapon in TF2. The experience of using this thing optimally is like constantly rolling on a drug that gives you the best high ever, but only lasts like 10 seconds at a time. The key thing you should be keeping in mind while using the Babyface is that you cannot and will not be maintaining a full boost for extended periods of time. It only takes 25 damage to completely drain it, which is equivalent to so many common damage sources in TF2 that it's easier to name things that don't deal at least 25 damage. So rather than trying to play extremely passively and hold on to a boost, you should play to the weapon's strengths and try to be as aggressive as possible. Treat the BFB as a weapon of ups and downs rather than a source of a concrete permanent buff. If you can adjust to your movement speed constantly fluctuating and take advantage of the brief moments of super extreme speed that it grants you, you'll feel right at home with this thing. The primary thing the Babyface's Blaster excels at is hit and run attacks. This is not a gun where you should be prioritizing lengthy, prolonged engagements or extended one-on-one fights. Rather, you should be rushing in, blindsiding an enemy before they can react, and getting out before any concrete retaliation comes your way. Even if it does, the 10% slower speed you start out with at a base of this weapon is still faster than every other class in the game, so losing a boost isn't some debilitating loss. You basically become a Dragon Ball Z character with this thing, just appearing in front of someone, blasting them, and disappearing as quick as you came. It only takes 100 damage to completely fill the boost meter, and considering that this weapon is functionally identical to stock in terms of damage and firing speed, it only takes one good meat shot to accomplish this. The gameplay loop of using this weapon is designed in such a way that you will never maintain a boost for long, and you need to be in this headspace to optimally use it. Your life is more valuable than your boost in TF, so if you need to double jump in an engagement or risk taking that unbelievable 25 damage to secure an escape or win a fight, you should. I once said that trying to gain the boost of this weapon was too difficult to offset how easy it was to lose it, but I was clearly speaking from inexperience then, because the true application of the BFB is constantly gaining and losing boosts on repeat, and leveraging short boost durations to keep enemies on their toes, rather than hoarding a full boost like some kind of goblin. Combine this with the fact that damage from any source will fill the meter, even damage over time things like the Cleaver and the Rap Assassin, and you can get pretty creative in terms of how you regain your boost every time. Now, despite everything I just said, I still wouldn't call the Babyface's Blaster a very objectively good weapon. It's definitely very fun to use optimally, especially if you're like me and constantly rolling on 20 different mental illnesses, but it's still indisputably a very gimmicky weapon that trades the comfortable consistency of one of the best stock weapons in the game for rapid short-term highs. Considering its identical damage and function times to the stock scattergun, you're not actually accomplishing much of the BFB that you couldn't with that weapon outside of having a lot of fun and going really fast. Add on to this the inevitable frustration of your speed constantly shifting, and you've got a weapon that's incredibly map and game state dependent. Plus, its smaller clip size is extremely punishing and easily its most concrete negative. I talked about this a bit in my award-winning stealth weapons video, but Scout truly does live and die by his clip, and on a weapon where your movement speed is constantly fluctuating and making your aim very inconsistent, having 2 less bullets to fire before reloading is very inconvenient. You should be utilizing the strafe aiming technique with this weapon as much as possible, as you'll generally want to be on the ground at all times anyways while using it, but just remember that every shot counts. But all in all, I'm happy to say that my tune has changed considerably on Scout's Babyface's Blaster. I was clearly approaching this weapon from the wrong headspace in the past. I treated its boost like something that you needed to doggedly hold on to, which isn't at all how you're intended to use it, and using it that way is a recipe for a bad time. For all my belly aching about it in the past, the boost loss on taking damage is something that this weapon needs to be balanced. You cannot put the agency to hold onto the boost entirely in the Scout's hands. We've seen how that goes in the past. For what it is, I currently find the BFB to be a very fun, if gimmicky, fringe Scout unlock to whip out when you want to tweak even more than usual as TF2's dedicated twitchy gremlin. I don't think it's objectively very good. Consistency will always be more important to me than constant highs and lows, but it is most certainly fun, and compared to stuff like the Caber or Righteous Bison, is a far cry from a weapon Valve actively hates. So, what have we learned? Well, above all, it should be that offering an on-command speed boost to any class in TF2 is also a surefire way to boost fun as well. As we discussed at the top, speed is analogous to success in competitive games, so even if you're not actually accomplishing much, just going really damn fast opens up so many opportunities for silly strategies, stylish plays, and a whole new level of skill expression that isn't possible under normal circumstances. If you noticed, all three of these weapons occupy a top, middle, and bottom position in their respective item slot tier list, yet in spite of that, they're all very fun to use regardless. I'm down for a fun-first mentality when it comes to designing weapons, and considering that none of these are particularly over-centralizing in their class's item slots, I'd say that this mentality worked quite well in this case. We are speed. Either way, thanks, hope you all had a fantastic day before, during, and after watching, and I'll catch you all later. Cheers!